Todd, and we've got another great show for you as we answer your gardening questions. Since this is a taped program, we won't be taking your phone calls this evening. You can still submit your pictures and questions via email for a future show. That address is byf@unl.edu. Please do remember to tell us where you live. Give us as much information as you can about your questions so we can give you a complete answer. Backyard Farmer is also available online at our YouTube channel as well as on our Facebook fan page, so be sure to check those out this week. All right, let's get going with questions. Kate, you are first up as always. Let's see, your first question comes to us from Lincoln, and then from Lincoln, and then from Lincoln, and then from Lincoln, which is, what is going on with these worms under the ash trees? We've noticed them especially heavy in the last few days. This person says the ground is also covered with a fine grit, wondering is that worm waste? And they're wondering whether these will soon be moths. Why are there so many this year? Are they killing the trees? What is the green invasion?
Yeah, worm waste is a really good term, good way to put it. These are the larvae of the brown-headed ash sawfly, which is a stingless wasp. And as you can guess, they come from ash trees, and it's been a really common problem for the past 3 years, and it's pretty much just raining worm larvae out there. The good news is that they usually don't cause any damage to the ash trees, especially if they're mature. If you have younger ash trees, you can dislodge them with a spray of water, but if they're already on the ground, really the only thing you can do at this point is to sweep them up.
Is there any way to keep them from coming back next year?
Sometimes we see that ash trees that have been treated for EAB tend to have less issues with these ones.
All right, and apparently we have a short on the Facebook page about this, so that will help our people. Awesome, all right. Let's see, your second two, you have two questions on this one. This is a Lincoln viewer. He found these after losing a tree in our recently friendly storms. This is an old Lincoln neighborhood. It was a very old redbud. And he's wondering, these were in the tree, so.
Yeah, so these are actually white grubs. And we typically associate white grubs with the pests that feed on the roots of our grass and in our lawns, but there are some species of white grubs that live in and feed on rotting wood. And so these happen to be one of them. That big one is really cool. It's probably a flower hermit beetle, which turns into a big and beautiful scarab beetle.
Big, beautiful beetles as long as they don't eat your trees.
Yes, yes.
All right. You have one more picture, Kate. This comes to us from Omaha. He's seeing a white fuzz on his apple trees at work. He's unsure what it is. I did send him another question asking if the fuzz moved, and we did not hear back from him. So
assuming that it does move, this is most likely going to be the woolly apple aphid. And woolly apple aphids tend to congregate on wound sites, so that's one thing that you're going to want to take care of on the tree is that wound. But what's interesting about these aphids is not only do they feed on the trunk, but they can also feed on the roots underground, and that's kind of really where the issue is. If these are the only ones you're seeing, you can simply squish them or spray them off. But if you continue to have issues with that tree, you can apply an insecticide like diazinon or 7 to help take care of those aphids.
All right, and it did look like that tree was a little deep in the ground as well. So that's probably not a good thing.
Right.
All right, Terry, you have two pictures for your first one. This is, how do I get rid of wild strawberries invading my lawn and flower gardens? There are too many to just pull. This is an Omaha viewer.
So, well, first they're kind of pretty, so you might reconsider if you want to keep them. But in your lawn, actually you can use any broadleaf herbicide would work. The issue is going to be within your own landscape, especially from the pictures that you sent in. It looks like it's in and amongst some other ground cover like vinca. Pulling it's probably going to be your best option. You could maybe try that, the glove of death that Rock's always talking about, where you put the rubber glove on and then the cotton glove and then kind of just touch the stems and try it and see if you can get rid of that. But I'm going to suggest probably more likely digging it out of your perennial beds and then using a broadleaf herbicide in your turf. However, it's also probably going to take multiple applications because they are kind of hard to get a hold of a little bit.
All right, Terry. Two pictures on this next one. This is a Lincoln viewer. The flower beds have been overrun with this plant. She's attached pictures. They're coming up in the middle of everything. She's wondering, is this a weed? Is this a native? Should she just pull them? What are they?
Well, that's a good question. We've all looked at these. We're not exactly for sure. We think it might be a flux. So if you had flux in there at one point, it could have seeded itself about. My suggestion would be to pull it and maybe just keep one or two. When it goes to flower, then we would be able to tell you a little bit more. When it gets a little bit more robust and bigger, we might be able to identify it a little bit easier. But this young, sometimes some plants look like other plants, and it's a little hard to see with just that one picture.
All right, and two pictures on this next one also. She saw this weed flowering earlier this year, and she says we might have talked about it already, but here it is again, spreading, forming these big mats in the garden. The question is, what is it? How can it be controlled so it does not come back next year?
So this is Veronica, and I do believe both Rock and Matt probably have already talked about this. You usually see this earlier in the spring, and it's actually one of the first kind of things that we see blooming early in the spring, also called speedwell, and it does kind of form these mats and stuff. If it's in amongst just kind of a landscape bed and there's nothing underneath it, it's really easy to just take your soil knife down and kind of dig it out. That way you wouldn't necessarily need to be using any herbicide on it. If it is in amongst kind of your grass and stuff, then just a broadleaf herbicide would work for that.
All right, and annual, perennial, come back.
Oh, it is a perennial. Okay. So it will most likely take multiple applications. So I would really highly suggest, especially if it's in and amongst your grass, maybe wait till fall to control it. That would be your best bet.
All right, Kyle. Mm-hmm. This is a Lincoln viewer, a 40-year-old linden tree. They first noticed this in the winter of 21, 12-inch vertical crack opened, and then water came out of the crack and froze. Temperature rose, crack closed, and now they're seeing it again coming through the crack. One of the photos in here is actually the ice or the frozen water, and it appears healthy, but what is this cool phenomenon?
This is, nothing to be overly concerned about. This is either bacterial, wetwood, or slime flux. Two names for things that are technically different, but they behave very much the same. So basically, the tree there's a lot of other bacteria and yeast that have started to grow inside of the tree. And as the yeast and bacteria continue to metabolize, the pressure builds up, and eventually, like everything, when the pressure builds up, that tree is going to crack, and some of that stuff oozes out. And so, hopefully, maybe it'll change color too. I know there was a honey locust near my building on campus that had some great orange and green slime flux coming out of it a couple years ago. But honestly, nothing to be concerned about. There's a fair amount of research out there that shows that having trees that are infected with slime flux actually decreases the rate of other fungal invaders. It raises the pH to a point where fungi just can't really tolerate it. So,
tree barf.
Just a fun thing. Yep, tree barf.
Okay.
Nice.
We have two pictures on this next one. This is a Harlan, Iowa viewer with a maple. Leaves are curling, shriveled. The tree is thinning. Last year's leaves stayed on the tree for most of the winter.
Yeah, I think that right now what I'm seeing in these pictures is anthracnose. The cool, fairly wet spring that we've had, there's been a little bit of a delayed bud break period. So I think anthracnose is what we're seeing here. Anthracnose shouldn't make the leaves stay on the tree all winter. And so I would be curious, I guess, to know what type of maple it is and how abnormal that is that the leaves didn't drop.
If it's a sugar, that's pretty normal.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, two more on this one. This is really interesting. She's planted these arborvitae, and then they turned black, and she purchased some more, and they're doing this sort of black, strange, moldy stuff. This is Sioux City area. She did douse them with a copper fungicide. What do we think this is?
I think this is same as one of my favorite 80s punk bands is Black Flag. And so Black Flag of arborvitae. Don't really know much about it. It's just something that happens sometimes. We think that there's primarily an environmental component. Sometimes smoke seems to cause this a little bit. Some other causes, it's been attributed to animal urine as well. And so if you have a dog that's maybe using those shrubs, that could be a reason. But we don't really know what causes that black flagging, but it is very rare to have a tree that is actually killed by it. So just prune it out, looks like you did what you should do, and hope it doesn't come back.
All right, very weird.
Yes.
All right, Scott, peonies are beautiful and peonies are weird. So this is a West Omaha viewer. 13 years ago, she planted this one. This year, she's got a top knot extension, 3 buds, 1 smaller, lighter pink. What's going on with the peonies this year?
Peonies haven't been following the playbook this spring. We've been seeing quite a bit of different variation. The flower color hasn't been true to type. Right now, we're thinking it's more environmental. It's not uncommon for peonies to have a side bud. You can have 2 on each side of the main flower. That is normal. A lot of times it will be smaller, not the same color, or just a lighter variation. The plant looks healthy, nothing to worry about.
Just enjoy.
Exactly.
All right, you have 1 picture on this next one. This could have come from a lot of people. She purchased this hydrangea, all 3 colors in 1 pot. She wants to know a lot of things, but mostly what should she do with this and how does she make it blue?
There's a lot going on. The best thing that we could do is possibly treat this as an annual. There's a couple of different types of hydrangeas in that pot. They've done some chemistry to get those different flower colors. Once the flowers have faded, you can snip them off and put them in the garden, maybe morning sun, afternoon shade, and hope for the best. Unlikely it's going to come back and bloom for you next year.
All right, and 1 more, and this is also a hydrangea. This is a little quick fire, which is a panicle hydrangea. No buds on the old wood, leaves coming up at the base, just barely. They're wondering if they should prune it to the ground. This is southwest Iowa. It's never flowered.
Right. If you have no new growth off of that old growth from last year, go ahead and cut it back down to the ground. Again, unlikely you might not get flowers again this year. Maybe it's a good opportunity to explore other options for this space.
All right, thank you, Scott. Well, we love raised beds and the advantages they can give you for a successful garden. But sometimes the size of the bed can be challenging to fill with soil and compost. Terry tells us of a method that might help that problem.
We have had a whole bunch of emails come in, people asking about raised beds and adding the soil to it and how much soil do they need to add. Well, it kind of depends on the size of your raised bed, and something like this one is pretty large and you're looking at like 3 yards of soil adding to this. So I have done this before, and that is a lot of wheelbarrows full of soil putting into this raised bed. So one of the options that you can have is to kind of fill up the bottom. One of the things that have been coming out, and that's called hügelkultur. So there's not a ton of research about hügelkultur, but hügelkultur kind of started showing up in research articles and stuff back in the 60s. Really what it does is it takes like old wood and branches and stuff and fills in the bottom part, and then you put soil on top of that. Those branches and stuff become kind of a filler and kind of a system to kind of help keep that soil moist, and then you plant on top of that kind of mound or that hügelkultur mound that you have. So you can kind of take that same concept and use that in some of these raised beds to really help kind of eliminate some of that soil that you have to add to the bed. One of the things you have to think about is how tall is your raised bed. The most you can add to the bottom for branches, logs, those kinds of things is about 1/3 of the total height. So if you're talking about like a 17-inch height raised bed, then you're only talking about a few inches. If you're talking about one like this one that I'm standing next to, which is 32 inches tall, then you're talking, maybe about 10 inches that you can fill to the bottom. So that's really going to lessen the amount of soil that you're going to be hauling from your soil pile into your raised bed in those wheelbarrows. One of the things that you need to remember is that you want to use ones that maybe not have a lot of dead and decaying on it. So you want a little bit newer so that they won't break down quite as quickly. So if you have an old wood pile and stuff that's been sitting around for a few years, use a little bit of that. But if you have some newer wood, maybe try to use some of that too. It will eventually break down, so you will continually be adding soil into the raised bed each year, but you won't be adding quite as much. You'll be able to maybe get away with going to the local nursery and buying a handful of those kind of raised bed bags or garden soil bags to add, instead of going to maybe one of those landscape places and buying yards and yards of soil. Remember, one of the soil types that we really look at is you want some topsoil and compost added into this. So try to get maybe a 70-30 mix of topsoil and compost. You want that compost, that organic matter in that soil, and that will really help your vegetables and your flowers perform well throughout the years.
It really is a simple concept about volume. Adding those materials will help you save time, money, and work. You'll still have a great bed to raise your plants in. All right, Kate, 2 pictures on this next one. This is an Omaha viewer. This is a hillside creeper Scotch pine, which is a little bit of an unusual one. Small little reddish round guys. You can just barely see them on the needles. He wants to know what they are and should he spray them.
Those are pine tortoise scales. And like all insects, if you're going to treat for them, or all scales, I should say, timing is really important. So with scale insects, you want to treat when the crawler stage comes out. And because these ones only have 1 generation per year, that's going to be June to early July. So if you do need to treat, as long as the tree's healthy, you can rely on natural enemies. But if you see some decline and you do need to treat, that would be your time frame, and you can use a high pressure spray of something like insecticidal soap.
All right, thank you, Kate. Your next one comes to us from Lincoln. She has mystery stuff on both a rugosa rose and on an adjacent silver maple. What is this, or what are these probably on these things, and what do you do about them?
So they're both probably galls. They're going to be different galls because they tend to be pretty host specific. What she's seeing on the rose is probably spiny rose gall, which is caused by a wasp, and then on the maple, that's going to be caused by a mite. But with all galls, really a lot of it is just going to be cosmetic, and most of the time they don't hurt the overall health of the plant. So really, if it's an issue, the best thing you can do is just prune it out and then destroy it and hope that it doesn't come back next year.
All right, you have 1 picture on the next one. This comes to us from one of our master gardeners. He wonders, is this black knot on this oak?
It's not. So these are most likely going to be another set of galls. They could be really old oak bullet galls, could be really old oak bullet galls, or they could be phimosis galls, which are caused by a fungus. But either way, once again, you just need to prune it out, destroy it, and if it's on the leaves, you can always rake the leaves in the fall and just get rid of those as well.
All right, thank you, Kate. Terry, you have 2 pictures on this next one. Her title is Evil Grass. She's in Lincoln. It has slowly started taking over the lawn. The fescue is not very thick, so it does weed easily, but it will not die. She wants to treat it so it will go away forever, and the rhizomes also go forever.
Yeah, so she's doing a very good job. I was very impressed by the length of stolons that she got out. But I believe this is nimblewill, so you can actually treat nimblewill within the grass with with mesotrione, so that would be a chemical that you can put. It'll really help get that out, and it won't hurt the bluegrass. But the other thing that you really probably need to do is make sure that you're overseeding and getting your bluegrass much more strong and much more healthy and much more robust in that area. And that would actually help some of those kind of being able to creep into the area.
All right. You have 3 pictures on the next one. This comes to us from Omaha. She said the clump is about salad plate size, little, she's calling them seed heads, which I think are probably still just the flowers, 6 to 8 inches tall. She wonders, is it a weedy or ornamental grass? Is it invasive, and should she keep it?
Well, I guess a weed is only, a plant out of place. So if you don't want it, then I guess that's going to be your decision. But I would keep this. This is actually a sedge or carex. So it's kind of ornamental. It's going to grow in a bunch, so it's not going to kind of move out very quickly, but you could keep it. Lots of people are actually using this as an alternative turf. So you could potentially kind of see what it does and see how it reacts in your landscape.
Excellent. All right, 1 picture on the next one. This comes to us from northern Douglas County. We talked about this on Lightning Round without a picture. He's wondering how to treat kill bedstraw. He lives on an acreage, lots of it throughout the area. Can you treat it with a chemical, and when? And I know a lot of other people have the darn stuff too.
Yeah, so you really can't treat it much more anymore because it's basically gone to flower and it's pretty much got its seeds on it. So really what you're going to want to do is do a pre-emerge in the fall, because it's actually going to germinate early in the spring. So like in September. Just to give you an idea, I used to have this when I worked at the state fair, and I would put like a slick jacket on, and I literally rolled it up underneath the trees to get rid of it, and then I put pre-emerge down. So you could try that.
All right. Excellent. Okay, Kyle, you have 2 pictures on your first one here.
Okay.
This comes to us from Omaha. Why is one of the roses getting spotty yellow leaves? And you can see them on this one. And their second picture is another rose with a different rose issue, I think.
Yeah, so we have 2 different things that are going on here. Starting with this picture, this to me is black spot of rose, Diplicaron rosea. Not as common as it used to be, but one of our most common fungal diseases of roses. A lot of the newer cultivars are more resistant to it, but this fungus can be taken care of with any of your broad spectrum fungicides. So Captain, Daconil, anything like that will work. Now, this other one, I think that what's going on here is rose mosaic. And rose mosaic is a couple of different viruses that they all form similar symptoms, but symptoms can look very different depending on which rose cultivar you're looking at. But we can have the very yellow veins, or some ring spots, or just some squiggly lines in the rose, or just some chlorosis, as you were seeing in yours. Unfortunately, as with any of our viral diseases, once the plant has it, it will have it forever, and so there is nothing to do about it aside from removal. Now, one nice thing about rose mosaic is it has not been shown to spread between roses in nature. So because you have it on this rose does not necessarily mean that it's going to keep spreading down the line.
Excellent. All right. 1 picture on the next one. This is a Cedar Bluffs, Nebraska viewer. She's got a 1-year-old blueberry plant. Discolored leaves at the beginning of May. It is facing west.
Yeah, I think this is not a disease. I think it's maybe environmental. The lesions don't look quite right. They're weird. They're kind of a weird shape, and it's hard to describe what a weird shaped lesion is unless you spend all day looking at lesions on plant leaves. But doesn't really seem to be any consistency regarding the veins, and I do wonder if this isn't an environmental thing, primarily just from the extra heat in the west.
All right, 2 more. This is a Lincoln viewer. She has an alder buckthorn, so the fine leaf, probably fine line. Orange rust blotches every year. She's used a topical spray on it. what is there, and is there anything they can do besides spraying? And the second picture is actually our established invasive European buckthorn, which all looks like this.
Yeah, and that's the same thing on both of them. It's one of our crown rusts. And on buckthorn, it's really not considered to be a problem. If it's on the invasive buckthorn, just get rid of that plant. We don't really want that anyway. But if it's on one of our more desirable buckthorns, control it really isn't going to be necessary. Nor are there any products that are labeled for crown rust on buckthorns. And so this, like all of our rust, it has multiple hosts that it goes to. And this is actually a fairly serious disease of oats. And so basically, if you can remove all of the oats within about a 2-mile radius of you, you will probably get rid of the rust on your buckthorn. But and unfortunately, the topical spray is not going to be terribly effective. You would have to repeat it throughout the season. And it's not harming the tree, it's just making some weird kind of orange little finger tendrils. So right. I like it.
You are weird.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott, 2 pictures. This comes to us from Elkhorn. This is a birch that's doing some struggling, lower branch dieback, upper half is better. He used a BioRush iron soil injection and more watering. Wondering anything else he should do, or is this birch central this year?
The past 2 growing seasons, we've been seeing birch trees struggle. We're thinking that this is more environmental issues. We want to take a look at that bed that the birch tree is planted in. We want to maybe pull back some of that rock, see if there's any type of landscape fabric. If so, pull that fabric up, get rid of it. We do want to water. Right now, we're lucky we're getting plenty of moisture, but when we go back into a drought, continue to water, prune out any of the dead, if there's any dead branches, but continue to give it some good health care.
All right, thank you, Scott. This comes to us, these 3 pictures from Martel. They had it planted, calling it a fire maple, planted professionally in 2012. There were 3 smaller trunks. This year they've actually merged into 1 larger trunk. The 3 smaller limbs don't have any leaves. They show no signs of leafing out. Small bright red suckers growing out of the limbs and from the very base of the tree. They're wondering, should they cut back the 3 limbs where the suckers are growing, or should they start over?
This is a great time to start over. The suckers are not going to become a good, healthy tree. They're not going to be something worth saving. Not sure what caused the tree to fail, but something happened. It could have been planted too deep. It could have been the winter. It's just really hard telling, but now is a great time to take it out and start over.
Great, and 2 pictures on the next one, Scott. This one is in Lincoln, so you can see what's happened to the tree here. It's got the second picture shows us the bark separation. They're wondering, should she cut that 1 flappy piece off, and do we think this tree is going to survive?
That's a great question. The first part, yes, we should go ahead and remove that part of the bark that is not attached. Very carefully remove it with maybe a sharp box cutter, or have an arborist come out and take care of it for you. You want to take a look at the tree, look what's around it. That's a pretty significant wound. We want to evaluate if that tree would fall over today, what would it hit, and can you live with those risks? So take a good look at it, but it might be an opportunity to start something new, and then in a couple of years, take out that maple.
Welcome back to Backyard Farmer. Coming up later in the show, we'll head out to the garden to take a closer look at the newly installed Flagstone patio. Right now, it is time for the lightning round. All right, Scott, ready?
I'm ready.
This viewer wants to know whether they need to gradually take their houseplants outside, or can they just do it?
That's a good question. Gradually taking them out would be the best thing to do.
All right. We have an Omaha viewer who wants to know whether they should mulch the vegetable garden now while the soil is wet, or should they wait until the soil temps are higher?
Go ahead and mulch it now. The wet soil is not going to affect anything.
All right. We have a Lincoln viewer who wants to replace the grass in her parkway with a short creeping thyme. Is there a seed source for that? Have you heard of a seed source?
Off the top of my head, I have not, but creeping thyme is a fairly common requested plant, so I'm sure there's quite a few online sources or even maybe a local garden center.
All right. We have a Lincoln viewer who has a red twig dogwood whose stems are flopping. Should he use wire to tie them up?
Probably not. You would want to try to figure out why it's flopping, maybe take those out if they're pretty severe, but probably not.
All right, nice job. Okay, Kyle, ready?
Born ready.
Okay, we have your first one comes to us from Carney.
Okay.
This is a viewer who has choke cherries, and the leaves are covered with powdery mildew. They're wondering whether that will affect the fruit of the plant.
You may have less fruit, a little bit less yield than normal, but should otherwise be fine.
All right. We have an Omaha viewer who cut down a huge tree over 2 years ago already. They're wondering how long before the shrooms all over the lawn will disappear.
How long do you have to wait? It'll take a while. Another 5-10 years. Wouldn't be surprised.
All right. We have a viewer from Cambridge, Red Willow County, who has an aspen, and it has these black sunken spots on the trunk. Any ideas?
Sounds like some sort of canker. I would just keep an eye on it, watch for signs of decline.
All right. We have a Lincoln viewer who says the leaves of their sycamore turned gray and fell off. Seems like the new leaves are okay. What was that?
Anthracnose.
All right. Apples are showing little orange spots on the leaves. Is that disease?
That is the early sign of our friend cedar apple rust.
All
Just
right.
coming to say hello.
Great. Okay, Terry, ready?
Sure.
Sure. All right. We have a viewer who wonders, is there a good chemical she can use to kill bindweed in the gardens and in her landscape trees and shrubs?
You can use any broadleaf weed killer, but I would definitely use the glove of death method.
All right. This is a viewer who needs just a little bit of sod, and they're wondering whether the sod that they see sitting on the pallets at the box stores is okay.
If you can get it when it first comes in, probably, but if it's been sitting there for a while, it might be dried out and you may not get a good rooting.
All right. We have a viewer who wants to know whether they can plug out of an existing buffalo grass lawn now into new spots.
I would probably wait about a month or so till that turf is really up and going.
All right. Several people are asking, is it too late to aerate, or is it still okay because our weather's been so interesting?
Oh, I don't know. I probably would wait now until fall. If you're going to do any overseeding and stuff, that would actually be more beneficial.
All right. Dog spots are showing up in yards. Does tomato juice work?
I have no idea. Does that count?
Kind of. That was a pass. All right. Are you ready, Kate?
Yes.
Your first one, are mosquitoes attracted to colors?
Yes, they are.
What colors?
Oh gosh. Red, orange, blue, and probably another one out there. Yeah.
All right. We have a Farragut, Iowa viewer who wants to know when they should plant their cukes and zucchinis to miss the vine wilt bugs.
So probably squash vine borer. You're going to want to wait until after they're done flying and laying eggs, and so that's probably going to be late June, early July at the latest.
All right. We have a viewer who wants to know, is there some sort of a natural product that can be used in the vegetable garden to treat for chiggers?
No.
All right. This viewer got bit in a line, 1/4 of an inch between them by something she didn't see. Are no seams active?
They could be, but there's a lot of bugs out there that you probably don't notice that can bite as well.
All right, will some sort of a soil drench work for borers and sawflies in trees?
Yes, the same things that you treat for emerald ash borer.
All right, wonderful. Well, one of the great features out at our garden is our containers. We haven't gotten started with those yet, but Terry discusses container prep and a few other things out at the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're moving along, we're going to get stuff planted. We're going to start putting our containers together. Remember, thriller, filler, spiller, so those big, huge kind of fun things either in the center or the back of the container, and then lots of color in the middle, and then spill something over the edge to really soften those edges. So that's our main goal for the Backyard Farmer Garden this week. We're also getting a lot of our warm season crops in. We're getting a lot of our seeds in, so a lot of the beans and zucchinis and those squash are going in by seed, so the direct seed. We're also trying to figure out what we're going to put up our new trellises on our raised beds. So we're looking at some different plants to put up that. So this week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're really going to be getting everything in the garden. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and see what we've planted.
All right, let's take a look at the plants of the week with Scott, and these are for Memorial Day, red, white, and blue. So what do we have, Scott?
Right up here up front is a biannual called Dame's Rocket. We often see this growing along the roadside. Purple flowers, very fragrant. You want to plant it with caution. It has been known to escape cultivation. It can self-seed, so use a little bit of caution if you plan to use it. Up here we have is our mock orange. Absolutely lovely shrub. It's something that honestly most people should plant. Just lots of bright white flowers, really pretty. And then finally over here we have, all right, there we go, is just a nice red old rose from the Backyard Farmer Garden. We're not sure of the cultivar, but you just can't beat roses.
Exactly, very beautiful. Good Memorial Day combination. All right, Kate, we have 3 pictures for this first one. This is a volunteer American elm here in Lincoln. It's about 15 years old. For the past 3 to 4 years, these clusters of leaves have formed on the new growth on the ends of the branches. Other elms, Siberian and other American in the same area, don't seem to have the problem. And the entire panel, viewers, is fleeing what is flying off of the sample that Kate has.
Yes, so I brought with me, these are another type of woolly aphids. These are woolly elm aphids. And as you can see in the sample down here, there are quite a few of them. They're all over the desk. They're flying in the air. And the issue with these ones is that they cause this leaf curling. And once that leaf curling happens, they're pretty well protected in there. And this is a pretty, I would say, moderate to severe infestation on these ones. So the key really is if you want to try to treat for this, you need to do it in the early spring. So we're past the point of treatment this year. If it's a large tree, you might want to consult an arborist, maybe even try a systemic to see if that gets you some relief. But otherwise, at this point in time, they're protected by those leaf curls, and this tree might just be a lost cause, to be honest.
All right, thank you, Kate. You have 2 pictures on the next one. This is a Lincoln viewer. This is a wayfaring tree viburnum. It was about 6 years old, grew nicely to about 5 feet tall, and then keeled over in one day. This was at the base. Was that borers, and how can this be prevented from other viburnums?
Yeah, so this is likely going to be caused by the viburnum crown borer, which is the caterpillar of a clearwing moth, really closely related to what we see like squash vine borers. So the moths will lay their eggs on the outside, the caterpillars will go in there, eat it from the inside out, and then as you can see in the pictures, that's exactly what happens. The plant is pretty much a goner. To prevent it from happening, what you're going to want to do is apply an insecticide from the soil line up to about 18 inches to protect it during that moth egg-laying period. And so that's going to be about mid-June and maybe another application in mid-July, and you can try a product like permethrin.
All right, thank you, Kate. And you have one more picture, and the question is, what is this little guy just about 1/8 of an inch long?
He's really cute, isn't he? So this is a immature leafhopper or a leafhopper nymph, and as their name suggests, they hop and feed on leaves. Very original.
Okay. Terry, you have 2 pictures on this one. This has come from Sheldon, Iowa. Bumper crop of this weed. What is it?
This is prickly lettuce. I think we've had this on for a couple times. I know Matt talked about it. It's pretty easy to pull when it's smaller. If it gets any bigger, then you might need a spade or something to get it out. But it is just an annual. It'll have kind of some pricklies on it, so you may need to use a glove when you pull it out.
All right. 2 pictures on the next one. This is Central Lincoln. He got rains, bumper crop of purslane in his raised beds, and rather than picking every single one or propane weed burner and setting fire to the whole mess, he doesn't want to lose the plants that are in there. Is there any hope?
I would probably just start over.
Yeah.
So if you do kind of cultivate it, any tiny little piece of that will actually germinate from any node. So it's really hard. You'd have to get it all out. But it is edible. So you could just let it grow and then put it in your salads. So you have that option also.
Especially when it's young, it tastes a lot better than when it gets old.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. 2 pictures on the next one. This comes to us from Norfolk. Shows up now by July. Is huge. What is it? Returns every year.
So returns every year means it's a perennial, and this is pokeweed. So it's actually a really pretty weed, but it's poisonous, so do not eat it. Do not eat the berries. The birds love it, and that's probably who brought it to you. So you're doing the right thing. It looks like you dug it out. It's going to have a huge root. It doesn't look like you got all of the roots, so you'll probably get some more of it back, and you're just going to have to continue digging it out.
All right. 3 picks for you, Kyle. This is a tomato plant that was growing in a greenhouse in Blair. 4 others have similarly damaged leaves. They seem to be improving. He took them outside.
This time of year, curled leaves, especially on tomatoes, there's a lot of herbicide being applied. The fact that he moved them and things are doing better makes me think that there is some sort of environmental component to it. Especially if the new growth isn't showing any of that curling or anything like that, I think that that's pretty obvious. We can chalk that up to some sort of chemistry issue. But if the new growth is showing some of that curling, we might be dealing with one of the many viruses that tomatoes get. But I think it's chemistry.
All right, and you have one more, and this comes to us from Adams. Same issue, same questions?
And same answer. I would not be surprised. We've been getting a lot of questions about herbicide injury right now, especially in people who don't think they applied any herbicides, but maybe their lawn care company did or a neighbor did or something like that. But I would really just, this one looks maybe like it's not doing all too well, and you may want to just replace it.
All right. 2 pictures. These are 2 different viewers. They're both in Lincoln. This is Iris doing this. Is it environment because it's been so wet, or what do we have going on?
I was actually wondering if the cold spell that we had about a week and a half ago or so did a lot of this. It doesn't really look diseased. There's a few lesions on there, but there's also some of these leaves that have that bronzing where there's no lesions. So I am guessing environmental on that one.
All right, and one more pick. This comes to us from Hastings. What is going on with this peony? Started out fine, then became unique. Please tell her it can be fixed. She said no herbicide sprayed in the area.
Scott already talked about peonies doing weird things this year. I've gotten other peonies that are doing weird things. I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's just a weird year for peonies, I guess. So, yeah.
All right. Scott, 2 pictures on this first one. This is her strawberry bed, and she thinks the brome is spreading while she's watching. And the bed's about 10 years old. She's northwest Iowa, near Schleswig. And she's wondering, is there anything she can do? She doesn't want to do chemical, basically.
The best chemical-free option would be going in there, just cutting back the brome, try to stress it out, try to just cut it back to ground level, keep cutting it back. Maybe try the glove of death at the last option, but cutting it is going to be the best thing.
All right, one pick on the next one. He's wondering, when is the best time to prune a medlar tree? This is in Lincoln.
This is a really fun tree. It's a fruit tree that we don't commonly see grown anymore. It is in the rose family, so we're going to treat it much like our pears and apples. We're going to do the dormant pruning probably late winter, early spring. It's a vase-shaped type plant. We just want to open up that canopy, keep it short so we can harvest the fruit.
All right, and one picture on the next one. This is her roses got sprayed around and on. She's washed them off. Some are 30 years old. Are they toast?
It's not positive. The best thing we could do is just good plant health care practices, keep them watered, don't fertilize, hope for the best, and that's all we can do.
All right, thank you, Scott. Well, a few weeks ago, we installed a flagstone patio with the help of some of our horticulture students. Our second feature tonight takes a look at how it turned out and hopefully gives you some ideas for your own installation. If you look at the flagstone patio that we built in the backyard farmer garden, you'll see that it's actually relatively simple for a homeowner. It's pretty simple if you follow the right process, and that would be, first off, figure out what you want, do the math on how many square feet of pavement you're going to need, pick out your materials, take a look at all the different colors, determine whether you want a subsurface underneath it that is maybe a little more complicated than we used. We did not put 3/4 minus or what you might consider road gravel under it to a depth of 4 to 6 inches. We didn't use a leveling bed. We basically just skimmed off the sod. We then used a flat spade to level it out. We pieced those flagstones together like a puzzle, so we had enough to work with. And then we actually had to go back in and raise some edges, lower some other edges, backfill with soil so we can plant into it. And again, we did do some tamping, but the tamping we did was not with a vibrating plate compactor. It was with one that you can actually go buy at one of your hardware stores or your box stores or a place like that. And then all we are going to do over time is we're going to re-level it again if we have to. If we get rains that are going to wash some of that fill out from beneath the stones. The hard part is to be able to get those level so you don't have toe kicks. We haven't completely gotten the cracks filled in as of yet. It does look great, and we're very happy with how it turned out. All right, let's turn our attention to this week's announcements. The first is the Syracuse Area Health Foundation Garden Walk, June 1st, 10 to 2 in Syracuse. Our second one is the Shady Choice Hosta Society Annual Plant Sale, June 2nd, 11 in the Mangelson's parking lot in Omaha. And our third one is the Monroe Meyer Guild Garden Walk, Sunday, June 9th, 9 to 4, also in Omaha. All right, we have a lot of questions, so this is lightning questions. Kate, first one, this garden area was unplanted. This is Omaha. What are these cool little holes?
These are antlion pits. So at the bottom of those pits are little doodle bugs, and as their name suggests, they wait for ants to come, and it's a tasty snack for them.
It's like the Sarlacc on Star Wars.
Yes, exactly.
All right, your second one comes to us, it doesn't say where on this, but her question is this a stink bug of some sort? There was only one, and it was this color. Should she scout for more, and will they harm the vegetables?
So this looks like it's one of our native species of stink bugs, so it's not going to be the brown marmorated one that everybody worries about. And if you've only seen one, I wouldn't be too concerned. Usually you don't need to treat for anything unless you've had a history of damage or you're seeing damage on the vegetables.
All right, your next one, she starts by saying, sorry about the shadow and the poor picture. This guy was fast. It has what it looks like pinchers on the front. What is it?
Are you ready for its name? It's pretty great. It's the big-headed ground beetle. And it's a beetle that runs on the ground and has a really big head and big mandibles because it's a predator.
All right. Terry, you have 3 pictures on the first one. The question here, there are a lot of lawns that look like this now, whether it's from the rain or whether people think if they let it go to seed, it will thicken up the bare spots. Is that true? And then when it finally gets mowed, these huge clumps of cut grass lie on the ground. Should that be raked up?
Well, let's start with don't let it go to seed because no, it will not thicken up. And most people try to mow once a week, but it's growing so fast, you may need to get out there more than once. You want to cut back to 3.5 inches. You don't ever want to take more than a third off at a time. And yes, if you have this, either you're going to mow over it again and break it down more or rake it up. If you haven't used any chemicals on it, you can put it on your garden as a mulch.
All right, and you have 2 pictures on this next one. This ferny plant has been appearing all over the garden edges. Gets over a foot tall in some spots. What is it? Can it just be pulled or mowed? And is it moisture that's making it so prolific?
This is water pod, so if you wanted to go up and pull it out of the backyard farmer garden, you could also do that for me. That would be great. But it's really easy to pull. You see it really when it's cooler out, and just pull it out and toss it.
Is it an annual?
It is an annual, yes.
All right. You have 1 picture, Kyle, for your first one. This is a Lincoln viewer. She says her husband and she woke up with this under one of the bird feeders. Is it slime mold or is it a Saturday night animal who partied too hard?
It's, one of their dogs went on a bender. This is one of our favorite slime molds, commonly known as dog vomit. It shows up, looks like a dog had a bender, and it'll disappear within a couple of days when it dries out.
All right. We have 3 pictures. This comes to us from rural Cozad. She saw these in her windbreak, cedars and hackberries. There were 2 of these lying under the trees. Were they attached to the trees and fell off, or what are they?
I doubt they were attached to the trees and fell off. I think these are just some of our scleroderma earth balls. Very common in disturbed landscapes. I think the email had even mentioned a bunch of dusty stuff on the inside, and that's all the spores. But nothing to worry about, but don't eat these.
All right, and 1 more. This is a Lincoln viewer. This is a Wentworth cranberry viburnum. All of a sudden, 1 stem did this.
I am not sure. There's some sort of injury to that stem. It has been a bad year for anthracnose. Anthracnose can cause a canker as well. So I would check down that stem and see if you can't find a lesion or some sort of injury. Pruning it will probably top it and give it a weird shape. So it may just be time for replacement.
All right, Scott, we have 60 seconds. So your first one is what kind of cactus is this?
This is the peanut cactus.
All right. Your second one is from Falls City. She planted some plants this year. This came up. What is this?
Looks like an astilbe.
So since now you have a minute, astilbe does what?
Astilbe, it's a nice looking perennial. It can meander across the landscape. Keep it.
All right, and then from Raymond, ponderosa pine. You have 2 pictures on this. What is it? And you brought a sample.
Yes, these are the male pine cone on our pines. They look kind of funny, but nothing to worry about, so just leave them as is.
All right, and they start out really beautiful, and then they turn into these squirrely looking little worm things, and people get all wigged out.
Yes.
Because they think it either is a squirrely little worm or they think it belongs to Kyle, and then they think they should spray or something, and it's just those pines, they need to reproduce. Mm-hmm. So you kind of got to have parts as parts to be able to do that. Yeah, very pretty.